When Israel started the talks with Lebanon in Washington, it was talking from a perspective that Iran had been weakened. But now, this is the first meeting after the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the US and Iran. And the feeling in Israel is that Hezbollah is getting a new lease of life. These were the words of the Israeli ambassador to the US, who's been referencing these talks, this fifth round of talks, and calling them train wreck. He's saying that in the beginning, the talks were heading towards a shared goal, which is having an Iran-free Lebanon, reaching an agreement that would lead to peace with Lebanon, as well as dismantling Hezbollah. And this ambassador is saying that this is not happening, and he believes that Hezbollah now stands to win from the Memorandum of Understanding. In general, the Israelis have been focusing on one thing, that they will not be leaving the so-called security zone in southern Lebanon, saying they need to stay there so long as Hezbollah poses a threat to their communities. They've been also wanting the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army to assume responsibility of areas there and to basically disarm Hezbollah. Now, generally speaking, the Israelis have been under US pressure to stop their attacks on Hezbollah. So there's a feeling that their hands are tied, that their operations are being curbed and limited only to defensive operations there, and hence the frustration inside Israel. And there are many voices that are criticizing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, not just for not meeting requirements and strategic goals in southern Lebanon, but also for the rift that they believe is happening now with Washington. Nida, Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, Ramallah occupied West Bank, Palestine.
Manuel Rapalo is at the State Department in Washington, D.C. with more on those talks.
The fifth round of peace talks between Israel and Lebanon have kicked off here in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. State Department. I'm going to read you a statement that was provided to Al Jazeera just moments before this fifth round of talks began. It says, quote, "Our shared goal is to end the cycle of violence for good. We are enabling Israel and Lebanon to negotiate as two sovereign states and to find a way to have peace and security." Now, U.S. officials are describing this as the reasonable next step toward a lasting and more durable peace agreement between these two countries. And the format for this fifth round of talks is going to be very similar to the previous rounds that we've seen, where there is both a military track and a political track. On the political track, the goal is to stabilize the relationship, to normalize the relationship between Israel and Lebanon, a relationship that outside of this building, outside of these peace talks, doesn't really exist. There is no formal diplomatic relationship between these two countries, who technically are still at war. Now, on the military track, the goal there is to de-escalate, to reduce tensions, and to minimize the risk of any sort of spillover that could transform this into a wider regional conflict here. Now, there are still many questions that remain unanswered, but from a diplomatic perspective, at least from the point of view of U.S. officials, the fact that these talks are still ongoing, the fact that this is now the fifth round of negotiations, does show that there remains interest from both Israel and Lebanon toward finding that durable, lasting peace. In the short term, the conventional wisdom from U.S. officials here is that there is a need to reduce the risk of a spillover, of a wider conflict, and one that could potentially see a scenario where the U.S. would be drawn further into the Middle East crisis. Manuel, Rapalo, Al Jazeera, the U.S. State Department.